How do you make a courtroom quiet? No one could say anything after Don Richards' statement about how Diddy allegedly abused Cassie. Get ready for the shocking news that revealed a truth that you could almost not believe. Today, Diddy's ex-wife finished her 4 days of hard work on the stand. During cross-examination, the defense asked her about a stent in treatment for PTSD, an alleged rape, and explicit text messages from the past 15 years. Richards said that Combs was sexually harassing him, discriminating against women, and making the workplace toxic because he saw sex acts and trafficking. Besides that, she said she was a victim of false detention. Richards said in her lawsuit that she wanted both compensatory and punitive damages, as well as other costs for PTSD, anxiety, mental pain, and financial losses she had because of Combs' alleged behavior. Combs has rejected what she said. At the beginning of September, his lawyer told E! News, Mr. Combs is shocked and disappointed by this lawsuit. Richards' testimony in Combs' ongoing trial comes 8 months after she sued the rapper, saying that he forced her to work in horrible conditions for years, including groping, assault, and false imprisonment. The case from September that E! News got said, Mr. Combs often met with Ms. Richard in his underwear, even though Ms. Richard repeatedly asked him to dress up. In her filing, the 41-year-old woman also said that Combs told her to take off all of her clothes, made degrading comments about her body, and broke into her dressing room without warning while she was naked and touched her without her permission while pretending to show the stylist what to do. Dawn Richards' testimony hit the headlines. Dawn walked into the courtroom like a lightning bolt. She used to be in Danity Kine, the girl group Diddy managed, so she knew a lot about how Diddy's life worked. Because of this, her testimony was one of the most important parts of the first week of the trial. People were hoping she would have some interesting things to say, but what she said about Cassie's alleged abuse shocked everyone in the room. What did she say that made the whole courtroom quiet? Dawn had a personal relationship with both Diddy and Cassie. Because she worked for Danny Kine, she was close to Diddy and talked to him and the people who knew him every day. Cassie was his longtime girlfriend, and many people thought their relationship looked good on the outside, but Dawn's testimony painted a much darker picture of what really happened behind closed doors. There had been rumors about abuse in Diddy and Cassie's relationship for years, but her words put those rumors into context. When Dawn's turn came, the energy in the courtroom changed right away. She talked about times she thought she saw Diddy lose it, making everyone around him nervous. That's what she said, and Cassie often took the brunt of his anger, according to her. Dawn made it clear that what she was saying wasn't based on rumors, but on real events she had seen happen. She went into great detail about one event that left everyone in the room speechless. She talked about an argument in which Diddy allegedly yelled at Cassie so loudly that her body language showed how his words had hurt her. It wasn't just the yelling, though, it was also the threatening tone and the way Diddy was said to have controlled every situation so that Cassie felt helpless to defend herself. Dawn would never forget this moment, and she said it was one of many times she felt like Diddy had control over Cassie. Dawn's testimony was powerful not only because of what she said, but also because of how she said it. Her voice was said to have been filled with anger and sadness, like she had been waiting years to finally speak out. Legal experts in the room said that first-person accounts like hers can be very helpful in a trial. It's one thing to hear accusations in a general way, but it's quite another to hear a witness describe specific events they saw. This kind of testimony makes the accusations seem more real to the jury, making them hard to ignore. But Diddy's reaction was a whole different story. As Dawn spoke, reporters in the courtroom said that Diddy's body language seemed defensive, as if he wasn't ready for her to be so direct. He shifted in his seat, his face darkened, and he reportedly leaned over to his lawyers during her testimony. He didn't speak up, but it was clear he didn't like what Dawn was saying, and he had good reason. Her words weren't just hurting his carefully crafted public image. They also gave Cassie's claims more weight in a way that couldn't be ignored. But what really struck the jury and people watching from the outside was when Dawn reportedly said she thought Cassie spent most of her time just trying to survive. Many people in the courtroom looked shocked as those 5 words hit like a hammer, summing up years of alleged physical and emotional abuse. It wasn't just about the fights or the control Diddy was said to have over Cassie. It was about how she had lived in fear and isolation with no clear way out. Dawn's testimony wasn't just another piece of evidence. It was a turning point in the trial that changed how the jury would see Diddy in the future. Her story fit into the bigger story being told about the alleged abuse, which will make it harder for the defense to defend. Dawn's words hung in the air as the first week of the trial came to a close. They weren't just about her memories. They were about shedding light on a situation that had been kept secret for too long. More witnesses, including people close to Cassie and Diddy, are expected to testify in the next few days. So the courtroom is ready for more revelations. Time will tell what happens next in this trial, but for now, Dawn's shocking testimony has set the stage for what could be a landmark case in the history of celebrity justice. If she saw a gangbang, which we know as a train, and she worked on the album The Train of Paris, and I heard someone on YouTube, it might have been Tis Tale, say that we didn't know what the Train of Paris meant. Well, now we do. The Train of Paris was actually a train in Scotland, not Paris. The only time I ever saw someone do something was when 2 guys and 2 girls walked into a room. It was their business how they did it or what they did. But he was brave enough to do it in front of Dawn and other people at a poolside in Scott. Are you sure it was Scotland, man? Don Richard, a graduate of Kane who started working with Sean Diddy Mez while competing on his show Making the Band in 2004, took the stand after Cassie finished her testimony on May 16th. Richard joined Mez's group Diddy Dirty Money after Danny Kane broke up. She told the jury that she saw Mez hit Ventura with an egg-filled skillet at his Los Angeles home in 2009. Richard told the jury that Mez came downstairs and asked where his phone was. He threw her to the ground and tried to kick her. When she hit Ventura with the pan, she rolled over on her back and tried to hide her head. Richard said Mez put his arm around the singer's neck and took her upstairs before she heard the glass breaking. I was scared for her, Richard said. I didn't want to do anything. The drama in the courtroom went to a whole new level when a shocking piece of evidence, an audio recording, was played. On it, Cassie is said to be heard threatening a Diddy employee who supposedly had video footage of a heated argument. The mood in the courtroom changed right away. What could be so shocking that even the jurors looked stunned? That recording was a turning point in the trial. It showed the emotional chaos that both Diddy and Cassie seemed to be in and gave us a new look into their toxic relationship. The tone of Cassie's voice on the tape was desperate, angry, and unwavering. People who work in the legal field said that her words showed someone who had been through years of conflict and pain. Her threats seemed more like the breaking point of someone who felt trapped than like they were planned. It was that emotional rawness that shook the room. You can hear Cassie's voice talking to a man who is thought to be close to Diddy. This man is said to have taped evidence of a fight between Cassie and Diddy. Cassie's voice shakes between anger and determination as she demands answers and makes threats to protect herself. As the recording shows, their problems went beyond just them and included people who worked for Diddy. It was hard for both jurors and bystanders to ignore how unstable Cassie's emotions were, especially her fear of being found out. But why would she put someone connected to Diddy in such danger by threatening them? After the trial, experts said that moments like these are common in abusive relationships. Many years of being manipulated, alone, and emotionally unstable can wear a person down to their breaking point, causing them to act in ways that may seem crazy to outsiders but are actually caused by constant mental and emotional stress. One legal analyst even weighed in, saying that the tape added more layers of complexity to the story that was already being told. It wasn't just proof that Cassie was in an unhealthy, abusive relationship. It also showed that she was in constant fight or flight mode, which made her emotional responses worse over time. The tape wasn't just Cassie standing up for herself. It also showed how being controlled, hurt, and trapped in an unstable relationship for years had affected her. You could almost hear the desperation in her voice. This wasn't about getting back at Diddy, it was about staying alive. The audio was confusing for the jury because it made the accusations against him stronger while also making them think about Cassie's mental state. Was the recording proof enough that she was having problems? Maybe not by itself, but when combined with Dawn Richards' testimony and other accounts, it painted a clearer picture of a harmful cycle that few could understand. The tape was very powerful, but it also raised other questions that the court had to answer. Diddy. Lawyers are likely to say that Cassie's emotional outburst disproves her claims, painting a picture of instability to cast doubt on her testimony. This is a common tactic. But here's the thing, this is something that defense teams often do when they have high-profile clients. And let's be clear, this won't just include Cassie's words or actions on the recording. Rumor has it that the defense will soon look into more of her past, from her mental health to her personal relationships. The tape isn't just about one angry moment, it's about how things got that way. For years, Diddy has been seen as a powerful figure in the music business, and Cassie has been cast as his girlfriend. In public, she is often expected to quiet down or give in. The tape blows that lie wide open. The courtroom heard more than just Cassie's anger. They heard her struggle to regain power in a relationship where she often felt like she had none. What happens next could change everything. Will the defense try harder to discredit Cassie, or will more testimony, tapes, or evidence show more about how their relationship really was? One thing is for sure, the jury is now dealing with not just a trial, but a deeply complicated story of power, control, and emotional fallout. And the next move could change everything. Those are the things she will have to say in her lawsuit about how Diddy changed how she worked and how she could work by turning off her mic and not letting her sing songs or do certain things as a band member when he wasn't doing her sexual advancement. I don't know what to say about that, brother. All I can say is that it sounds like he's using his power to get back at people who work for him. And if they can show it 9 times out of 10, you'll lose in court. In one text message, Cassie writes, "I'm lost without you." We now know that she called herself Cease for Cassie cum Mez and that she wanted to have a child with him. The jury also heard an audio recording of Cassie threatening to kill a Diddy employee who had video of one of her freakouts with Diddy. Jurors were shocked, and I could see their eyebrows raised when Cassie was asked about getting a FaceTime from her now husband while she was having sex with Diddy. I think they're doing everything they can to discredit her as a witness again. The defense team's plan to focus on Cassie's past may have seemed smart at first, but it added new layers to the case that they probably didn't expect. They tried to destroy Cassie's credibility by bringing up her time in rehab, her battle with PTSD, and an alleged rape from earlier in her life. They wanted to make her seem emotionally unstable and unreliable, hoping that the jury would not trust her story as much. But their plan backfired. Instead of making Cassie look weak, it made her look like a woman who had been through a lot and was being manipulated by the system. Legal experts who watched the trial said that this strategy made Cassie seem more vulnerable than she really was. By talking about her problems, the defense may have made it easier to say that Diddy had emotional control over her. Instead of making Cassie look bad, her past made it clearer how someone like Diddy could use her weaknesses to stay in charge of their relationship. One of the most talked about parts was when private text messages between Cassie and Diddy were shown. In one, Cassie wrote, "I'm lost without you." The defense used these texts a lot to show that she was emotionally dependent and that their relationship, while stormy, was mutually consenting and healthy. However, these texts only show how complicated and fragile their relationship really was. Experts say that trauma survivors often show attachment to their abusers not because they don't feel pain, but because they've been tricked into thinking they have no other choice. Court heard these texts along with claims from the defense that Cassie's emotional state made it impossible for her to give a clear, reliable account of what happened during her relationship with Diddy. People who work in the legal field said this approach often goes after not only a person's testimony but also their whole character. Survivors of abuse often have to deal with this kind of scrutiny, especially during trials involving well-known defendants. It's a common legal strategy to point out inconsistencies, bring up personal problems, and try to create just enough doubt to change the public and jury's mind. But in Cassie's case, this strategy may have done more harm than good for the defense. Instead of finding flaws in her story, it gave more depth to the story of someone who was abused and controlled for years. By making Cassie relive and defend these events from her past, the defense may have unintentionally brought more attention to Diddy's possible abuse, especially since they had such a huge power difference while they were together. Many people who followed the case said that the new information about Cassie's mental health and personal history made her claims more believable. Her battle with PTSD and her time in rehab were seen not as flaws but as possible outcomes of being in an abusive and toxic relationship. This line of attack didn't seem to cast doubt on what she said. Instead, it made people wonder how much of Cassie's emotional pain was caused by her relationship with Diddy. The defense may have wanted to draw attention away from earlier testimony and evidence by making these points, but instead they painted a more complex picture of Cassie as someone trying to deal with unimaginable problems. It may have made her feel even more emotionally, mentally, and even physically trapped in their relationship. This sudden change in the way the courtroom works is already affecting how the jury sees the case. These details add to the story beyond text messages or single events. Things are becoming more clear. This is a story about patterns of behavior, power imbalances, and the damage they do to those involved. And with more witnesses ready to go, such as former Danny Kaine members and people in Diddy's professional circle, the story is only getting more complicated. This case is already very explosive, and the defense's attempts to discredit Cassie may have made her claims even stronger. As the trial goes on, more details about Diddy and Cassie's relationship will likely be revealed by people who know them. Unfortunately, we'll all be taken on a disgusting tour of his seedy, awful world. I think the man is depraved because he has no class and no kindness in his dark, dark heart. The facts are the facts and the texts are the texts. And I think it will be clear from the evidence that Ventura had a choice and chose to have those sexual encounters where she entertains other people in the bedroom. He liked having the freak-offs. She is being asked directly about the drug use, and it's clear that she's looking forward to one. Aubrey Day is the next name making waves in this already explosive trial. She is a former member of Danny Kaine and is speaking out about her time working for Diddy. As Aubrey gets ready to testify, everyone is asking, what does she know? What has she seen? Diddy's former employees, some of whom were close to him in both his personal and professional life, are also lining up to do the same. Each witness adds another thread to this story that is becoming harder to ignore. A lot of witnesses is very important. Don Richard's testimony already shocked everyone in the courtroom by giving a terrifying glimpse of Cassie's alleged abuse. Her words made the jury rethink Diddy's carefully crafted public image. Now that Aubrey is expected to speak, the patterns of control and toxic behavior that are being alleged might become even more clear. Working with Diddy during Danny Kaine's peak gives her a unique perspective, and she's probably seen what went on behind the scenes. That's what this trial is building toward, not just a few isolated incidents, but a possible pattern of behavior. Aubrey's testimony feels especially important because she has been vocal about how hard it was to work for Diddy in the past. Over the years, she's talked out in interviews about how tough he is as a manager and how high pressure things are at work. She hasn't directly accused him of abuse before, but the fact that she's willing to do so makes her testimony very interesting. If she backs up any of Cassie and Dawn's claims, it could paint a compelling picture of consistent behavior that spans years. Multiple testimonies are very strong because they create a chain of stories that are harder to dismiss or discredit. For example, Dawn described times when she saw Cassie being manipulated and yelled at by Diddy. She said that Diddy's actions left Cassie visibly shaken, and she stressed that the pressure and control seemed to be always present in their relationship. By itself, those details made a huge difference. Now that Aubrey has added to the story, the jury will start to see these accounts not as separate events but as parts of a bigger pattern. And once a pattern is seen, it's hard to argue that these events were just accidents or misunderstandings. Even more interesting is the fact that former employees are involved. These aren't just people in Diddy's circle, they were also doing his day-to-day business. Their testimony could help fill in some of the gaps, giving more context to the private moments that have already been talked about in court. What specifics they can give about the alleged abuse, or were they told to lie about it, will determine how credible their words are, but their very presence makes us wonder what they know and why they're speaking out. Now, it's impossible to ignore the effect of having so many witnesses. Lawyers say that the case against a defendant becomes stronger as more people come forward. Consistent stories from different people strengthen the accusations, especially when witnesses come from different points of view, such as personal ones like Cassie and Aubrey and professional ones like the former employees. But the defense has to work harder to discredit each account, which doesn't work as well when more people are against it. So, what might Aubrey say? That is the big question. Will her testimony be the next big surprise in a trial that is already full of them? Some think she might talk about professional dynamics that are similar to the personal control that Cassie says Diddy had, showing that his behavior wasn't limited to personal relationships but also included his work life. If this is true, it could add more weight to the prosecution's picture of a man who thrived on fear and control. The growing number of witnesses also makes the trial more important. It's no longer just one person's word against another. It's about building a strong story with many accounts. Diddy is already under a lot of scrutiny after the first week of the trial, and this adds to that. With each new person who comes forward, the question of what they will say and how it will change the case looms large. Aubrey O.D. and the others have the power to make a trial that was already very complicated into something much bigger. What happens when they testify will only be known in time. The first week of the trial was a spectacle, and Diddy's reactions were a big part of it all. Sitting at the defendant's table, he tried to keep the calm, strong attitude that people have come to know and love him for. During the trial, however, the cracks started to show. The courtroom was tense, and every move, glance, and change in his expression was watched closely by everyone there, not just the jury. What happened when he lost his cool? That's what everyone is talking about. People said the mood in court was heavy and almost suffocating at times, especially during the testimony and evidence presentations. When Cassie took the stand to talk about the relationship, all eyes were on Diddy. She talked about times when he allegedly abused and controlled her, which went well with Don Richards' haunting testimony. It became much harder to ignore the accusations. Diddy, who seemed calm at the beginning of the trial, became clearly uneasy during more intense testimony. People could see it in the way he shifted in his seat as Cassie spoke, the tension in his jaw rising as she painted an unflattering picture of a man who once seemed safe from harm. As the defense questioned Cassie, Diddy seemed to get more confident. The questions that focused on her past struggles with PTSD and rehab may have seemed to help his case. But people who watched the trial noticed that Diddy often whispered to his defense lawyers during these times, but his behavior changed completely when explicit texts and audio clips were shown. There were times when he looked calm, but then his eyes would narrow and his posture would stiffen. The evidence seemed to have weight in the room, not just for the jury, but for him too. The jury's reactions to the evidence, especially their raised eyebrows during the playback of the explosive audio recording, completely changed the mood in the courtroom. No longer was it about how the public saw Diddy, it was about how serious Cassie's accusations were. Usually, when celebrities are involved in high-profile cases, they rely on a well-trained public image to sway public opinion. But Diddy's image seemed to slip. Times like these can leave even the most well-trained public figures open to scrutiny, and this trial is no different. But what really set off alarms in the courtroom was when Diddy's temper clearly flared after Don Richard gave some of the most damning evidence so far. People in the room said he darkened his face, tensed up his body, and leaned aggressively toward his team while whispering furiously. People who work with Diddy have spent their whole careers making him look strong and in charge, so this loss of control was a big change from that image. Insiders say it caught the jury's attention in a way that the evidence itself couldn't. But this is about more than what happens in court. The effects of this trial are starting to show up in how people think about Diddy's legacy. He was a self-made music mogul who built an empire on charisma and a bigger-than-life presence. For years now, those same qualities seem to be working against him. Every time he loses his cool, whether it's through visible frustration, whispered conversations with his lawyers, or even the way he looks when he's not at ease, the jury is seeing more than just a powerful man on trial. They're seeing something fall apart, and when jurors sense weakness, it can often lead to more doubt, which works against someone as smart as Diddy. What makes this trial even harder to predict is the weight of what's still to come, with Aubrey O'Day and former employees among the witnesses. Diddy is about to face even more pressure. How much more proof is there? How many more first-hand accounts will back up what Cassie and Dawn have already said? Diddy's response so far shows that he knows the stakes are high, not just for his legal future, but also for his career and legacy. Even more emotional scenes are likely to happen in court over the next few weeks. For Diddy, the real question is whether he can stay calm as more damaging events happen. Will his reactions continue to hurt his carefully built public image, or will he find a way to regain control when it matters most? This trial is far from over, as more shocking details are expected to come out. We don't know what will happen next because the Diddy trial is more than just a celebrity scandal. It's a wake-up call about how abuse can happen in close relationships. Testimonies like Don Richard's have shown how emotional and psychological abuse can happen in plain sight. Cassie's struggles, even while being questioned by the other side, show how strong victims have to be to speak out in the face of intense scrutiny. This case shows how power and control work behind closed doors. Stay informed, help victims, and don't let stories like this go away. The next part of this trial could change everything we think we know. Watch out.